Good afternoon and welcome to MEIEA Meets. My name is Armen Shaomian and I'm the president of MEIEA, the Music and Entertainment Industry Educators Association. Before we get started, I want to inform you that this session will be recorded for our members and will be included on our YouTube channel. Today's MEIEA Meets is sponsored by the Mechanical Licensing Collective, and we are joined by two guests from the MLC. I'd like to start by introducing you to Serona Elton. She has been a member of MEIEA since 2006 and served in numerous board positions, including serving as president of MEIEA from 2011 to 2015. Serona is also the head of educational partnerships for the MLC. She serves as professor as well as director of the Music Business and Entertainment Industries program and as Associate Dean of Administration at the University of Miami Frost School of Music. She's also a Yamaha Master Educator. I'm going to hand it over to Serona Elton to take it from here. Serona?
Thank you, Armen, and hello, MEIEA family. Great to be here, and it was great to catch up with a lot of you at the MEIEA Summit recently. So I'd actually like to introduce you to our other guest. So I'm pleased to introduce you to Kris Ahrend. I consider him to be a dear personal friend and close professional colleague. He is the Chief Executive Officer of the MLC. I got to know Kris during our time working together at Warner Music Group. He held a number of positions at Warner, but most recently, he led the development and launch of Warner Music Group's Center of Excellence for Shared Services in Nashville, where he oversaw the operations of 15 different functional teams, providing a variety of administrative, financial, and legal services to Warner Music's US-based publishing teams, record labels, and corporate divisions. He has an extensive background in business and legal affairs and royalties. In addition to his work at Warner, he worked at Rhino and Sony BMG before that, and Sony when it was called Sony back before that, and in the intellectual property and litigation group at Simpson Thacher and Bartlett Law Firm in New York. Since we're mostly academics here in this MEIEA Meets, I will mention he's a graduate of Binghamton University and the Washington and Lee School of Law. He lives in Nashville and serves on boards of the Nashville Chamber of Commerce and Nashville Downtown Partnership and is a member of the Music City Music Council. He is also a lifelong musician. I am thrilled to be working with him at the MLC. Welcome, Kris.
Thank you, Serona.
So we can jump right into a presentation if you'd like, so you can tell everybody a bit more about the MLC, start us there. So if that's good with you, I'll go ahead and start sharing my screen in a second.
That's great. And I do want to just say thanks again to Armen and to you and everyone at MEIEA for spending some time with us today. As all of you know, Serona is extraordinary, and I've had the privilege of working with her and becoming a dear friend for a number of years now. And every time I meet someone in the industry, it seems they already know how great Serona is because they've run into her. So it's fun for me to be with you, knowing how many of you know her and how extraordinary she is. And I can say with confidence that I would not be here if she had not been a part of my life. She's just been extraordinary. So great to have her with us on the MLC team, and great to be here with all of you. And I'm excited to share a little bit more with you about why we want to talk with you and develop relationships with you, because you are all a really important part of our strategy at the MLC.
So two quick things before I start sharing the slides. It is MLC week, and that is why we have the backgrounds we have. Every week is not MLC week, although it is in our worlds, but this happens to be MLC week. And by the way, last year, 2019, Kris actually spent a little time at the MLC Summit and came and got to meet some of you in person, actually. So he's got connections with MEIEA that predate his time at the MLC. All right, so let me share my screen here. Sure, I share the right one. Can you guys see that in presentation mode? Okay. All right, I'm going to go ahead and kick it off to Kris.
Great. And so we thought it would be helpful just to start with a bit of an overview about the MLC and just catch you all up to speed. And I'm sure many of you know more about the MLC than our typical audience. So I'll try not to spend too much time on things that you already know, but it's worth touching on a couple of key points, even if they're obvious, just to make sure we're all aligned. The first one, as you can see from the slide, where did the MLC come from? We are the product of the Music Modernization Act, passed in 2018, one of those landmark once-in-a-generation pieces of copyright legislation that actually gets signed and then changes the way our industry works in significant ways. The last big changes to the Copyright Act took place in the mid to late 90s. Before that, it was the 70s. And then, of course, there's always the starting point of it all, 1909. But I know for many of you, you're familiar with the history and will appreciate the significance of these moments when our industry actually gets together and aligns on changes that we think would be helpful. And the MMA was one of those moments. As you can also see from this slide, the MMA actually did quite a few things, and there are 3 separate titles to the MMA, each of which address different issues. But for purposes of the MLC, one of those 3 titles was really driven by this failure in the market by digital audio services to effectively license musical works and then pay mechanicals to publishers and songwriters. And it was that failure that led to created the momentum behind that portion of the Music Modernization Act. So that's the fundamental business problem that the MLC was charged with addressing and hopefully solving. So this is a theme that has come up in a lot of our presentations and our discussions with folks, and it's a great way to help align on kind of what the MLC will do in very practical terms, and then what it won't do. And as you can see on the left, there are 4 primary things that we're responsible for doing. The statute's much longer than that, but these are certainly 4 headline responsibilities the MLC will have. The first is to establish and maintain a public database of musical works ownership information. The second is to administer a new blanket license created by the Music Modernization Act that's available or will be available starting on January 1st of this coming year to digital audio services that operate in the US. The services themselves don't have to be US based, so it could be a French service that has a US operation. And for that US operation, the blanket license would be available. We will receive usage data from those digital services, and we will match that data, which is typically built around the sound recordings that are made available on those services, with the musical works ownership data that we will be maintaining in the database I just mentioned. And that matching function is really the key toward addressing that failure in the market that led to the passage of the Act and the creation of the MLC. Hopefully, we will do a better job of making those connections between the sound recording data and the works owners, and that will then enable us to fulfill that 4th obligation to collect and distribute those digital audio mechanicals to music publishers, administrators, foreign mechanical rights societies, and self-administered songwriters, composers, and lyricists. And I know that's a bit of a mouthful in the end, but that is a pretty specific list of the people that we will potentially pay. And it's important to note that while the blanket license only covers US activities, the people that potentially will be paying will be all over the world, because as you all know, the music market is now a global market, and that means that there are songs and recordings, of course, that originate from all around the world on those US services. And where the song was written by someone based outside the US or represented by an ex-US organization, we still have the same obligation to pay them mechanicals that we would a US-based individual or organization. So those are at a high level 4 things that we will do. And then for many of you, the things that we won't do may be the more important points for your classes. And these again stem from questions that we receive in every webinar. And some of them really underscore why in a perfect world, a lot more people in our industry would go to your programs and study with you, because there are a lot of people out there in the industry working, making a living, who don't understand some pretty fundamental things. And so, of course, we want to try to help people understand the basics. So the first one is a common question, and that is, will we be administering performance royalties? Many folks don't really understand that there are several different rights under the copyright law that apply to musical works. They may know that they have a PRO, but they don't understand that the PRO is there to administer a very specific set of rights, the performance rights. And so they just think, well, if I'm working with that PRO now, does that mean I stop working with them and then join the MLC instead? So the clear answer is we will not be administering performance rights and musical works. We're not allowed to do that by law, and therefore we will not replace any PROs. The four big ones in the US being ASCAP, BMI, CSAC, and GMR. Similarly, some folks know about Sound Exchange, great organization, in many ways the most similar organization in the US to what the MLC aspires to be. And so they think, well, are you going to replace Sound Exchange? And the answer is no, emphatically no, we will not replace Sound Exchange. They're great, and they administer a different set of rights that actually relates to the sound recording, not the musical work. So they're even further afield from what we do than the PROs. But again, a lot of folks just know that they're an organization that administers rights and pays people. And so without understanding exactly what they do, they might think mistakenly that we're somehow going to replace them. We are not. The last three bullets speak more specifically to the scope of what we can do within that, we'll call it mechanical space. And as you can see, we are not allowed to collect or administer mechanical rights and royalties for physical products. While physical is no longer a prominent format for us in the industry, vinyl has certainly seen a resurgence. And whether it's vinyl, CD, cassette, or even 8-track, if someone out there still has them, we are not allowed to administer mechanicals for physical products. Similarly, we're not allowed to administer royalties for any use of works outside the US. And then finally, audiovisual works. We are not allowed to administer rights for works in audiovisual products. And that, again, is another growing segment of the market, and one that people may not often distinguish, because for folks consuming music on their phone, they may not understand the difference between an audiovisual service like a TikTok or a YouTube, and then a traditional audio only service like a Spotify or an Apple. And a lot of those services are adding video, which complicates it further. So again, that's at a high level a list of things that we will and will not do. And that's in the toolkit that we're going to be talking with you about. So if this slide looks interesting, don't worry about taking down notes. We're going to give it all to you so that you have it handy and can use it in your classes if that's helpful. Serona, I should say, as I go through this, please jump in at any time, because I feel like I'm teaching the teacher here, and I don't want to pretend I know more than you do. So don't hesitate to jump in.
I won't, but you're good.
All right, good. Keep me honest. So this slide just talks a little bit about us. A couple of points to note here. I am based in Nashville, as Serona said, and the MLC will be headquartered in Nashville. And that's a picture of the building where we'll be located. I'm sure a number of you have spent time in Nashville, and if you have, I'm happy to tell you we will be centrally located in the Gulch neighborhood, which is essentially right between Music Row and downtown Nashville. It's also adjacent to the new Nashville Yards district that will have a lot of high rises and entertainment venues. We're a couple blocks from the interstate, so easy to get to. If you came in town and you stayed at the Thompson Hotel or the W, we're literally around the corner, walking distance. So really great location, meant to allow us to be really easy to reach for any of our members or stakeholders that happen to be in Nashville or visiting. And hopefully someday that will be all of you. And me, and Serona. But for now, not quite yet. But that said, we do have team members in a number of cities around the country and the UK. And that's also important to note. We really set out to build the best team we could. And as you all know, finding the best people doesn't always mean that you can find them in your backyard. And so even before COVID, we didn't view that as a restriction. And so Serona is an example, based in Miami. We're thrilled to have her on the team, and she'll continue to be based in Miami. We've got Dave Bogan, whom some of you may know. He's our head of third-party partnerships, and he also is an adjunct at UCLA and some of the other LA area colleges, and he is based and will be remaining in LA. We've got our head of rights management, Maurice Russell, up in New York, and our new CFO, Eileen Weintraub, up in New York. And then we have a handful of folks over in London, including our CIO, Richard Thompson, and our head of international relations, Indy Chawla. So we're going to have leaders in a number of different cities in the country, certainly all the major music hubs. Perhaps Austin would be the one that's missing, but that's the one we can all go to hopefully in another year when we can go back to South by and enjoy the music in the town. And that will enable us to connect with folks where they are and not be limited to connecting with people who are only in Nashville. On the bottom right, you can see that we've been on quite a hiring spree, and we have now more than 40 employees working for us. When I joined in January, I was essentially employee number 1 or 2, depending on how you counted Richard, who had been there a little before me. And we've hired 40 plus people almost entirely during COVID. We're all working remote, as most of you are, or many of you are, I should say. I know some of your institutions are struggling with how to get folks back in at least part of the time. And when we say no negative impact from COVID, we really have that perspective in mind. Because of the happenstance of timing, we essentially started to build the organization right around the time that COVID arrived. And what that meant was almost everyone that joined our company joined after COVID and after we'd shut down. That meant that we had no ongoing operations, that we had to transition to a remote environment. And I'm sure for many of you, that seems like an impossibility or a dream, because for all of you, you've had to figure out literally how to recreate a college environment remotely under all sorts of strain and challenges. And I know how extraordinary that burden has been, because Serona and I talked quite a bit about the challenges that she's faced in Miami, and I'm sure they are similar to the challenges that all of you face. So I say that with no glee at all, because had we been operating for a year before COVID, that would have been yet another challenge for us to grapple with, in addition to the challenges of standing up the organization. But again, because of happenstance, we started the process right around the same time. And so we didn't miss a beat. We've built an entire team remotely, and we are fully functioning in a remote distributed way right now. In fact, with team members in more than a dozen states, because a lot of our younger team members were sheltering at home with parents when we hired them, expecting that they'd be in Nashville, but they didn't get the chance to get here yet. So we're doing the best to make it through, and I hope all of you are too.
I'll just add to that, we hired about 10 employees to help our customer experience, or really to be our customer experience team. And they were all recent graduates out of music business programs. And even though their positions are in Nashville, ultimately, we hired from programs all around the country. So it was a great opportunity to be on the hiring side, looking at all of our collective students as applicants.
Yes. I probably owe some of you personal thanks, because some of our new team members were your students, and they're pretty extraordinary, which means they learned a lot from you. So thank you. And that is a long-term, I think, objective of having relationships with so many of you. While we won't be hiring as many people in the future at any given moment as we had to hire this spring, both Serona and I recognize the value, or really the value you deliver in educating those students in your programs. And we preferred that in our hiring. We were looking for students who had gone through that experience and gone through your programs, because we knew that was going to make them better prepared to step in and start having an impact right away for us. So path to full operations. I was just looking at some dates earlier this morning. The MLC, our organization, was designated to be the MLC under the statute a year ago this past summer. So in less than 18 months, we've had to stand everything up, and that effort really began in earnest this past January. These are some highlights of kind of what we have been doing and what we need to do. From a technology perspective, we have been building and now have begun to roll out the first version of our user portal. That's the online portal that members of the MLC, the term we use to describe the people whom we will pay, the portal that our members will use to see their data, submit changes, new works registrations, and ultimately receive royalty statements when we begin sending those out next spring. And so that's been quite a technology lift to build that from scratch in a really short period of time. We have established the database of musical works that we're required to establish under the law, and we have done that with help from one of our vendors, HFA or Harry Fox. I'm sure all of you are familiar with them. And the data that we essentially acquired from them became the starting point for our data set. And then now, as we interact with members going forward, that data will grow and improve as they submit changes and updates to the data. So that was a starting point for us, and it was a great way for us to accelerate the process of building the MLC. It would have been very difficult for us to build that data set from scratch on our own. That gave us a great head start, but it is a starting point and by no means an end point. So we recognize that there's a lot of work to be done around data and data quality. And that speaks to the second item on the bottom left, helping members check their data. We'll touch on this, I think, a little bit later, but we launched an initiative, a couple of initiatives earlier this spring around data quality. One that you all might find helpful for your students is a really simple music data organization form. It's essentially a single sheet of paper that outlines the data that we need to register work. And we created that because what we knew was that there were going to be thousands, if not tens of thousands or more creators who were self-administered, who had never registered or work with any organization before, who wouldn't automatically know what's even necessary to do that. And so that one sheet is a really great educational tool. It outlines pretty high level, and pretty straightforward what it is you need in order to register or work. And that's available on our website today if you want to download that and use that or see it. And we also launched a data quality initiative, which allows folks to compare their data with the data that we have established and then on an ongoing basis will maintain to essentially see the discrepancies, if any, between their data and ours. So by giving folks a really easy way to do an A/B check of the data and get a report that only shows the discrepancies, we're hoping that we can make it much easier for people to manage their data and improve the quality of their data. I think, again, we have a slide a little bit later that I'll speak to a little bit more about that. Then right in the middle, blanket licenses. Again, under the law, we begin to administer the blanket license as of January 1st. That's when services can begin operating under it. Then sometime in February or March, we'll begin receiving usage files from the digital services. February, there's a deadline for them to provide the historic unmatched or unpaid royalties if they elect to do so. And then assuming folks operate under the blanket starting in January, we'll probably get the first usage files for that month of January in the middle of March. And all of that then will set us up to begin sending out royalties later this spring. So needless to say, a lot to do in a short period of time and still some pretty significant milestones ahead of us. But hopefully by this time next year, all of this is up and running and it's functioning effectively. And we'll be able to look back and tell you it all worked well. And then also begin sharing some of the exciting things that we'll be able to do once we get that foundation set up and operating. All right, so how it works. This is a slide that probably all of you will love, but it can be overwhelming for someone who doesn't know much about what we do. Serona, remind me, did you want me to kind of talk through this slide or were you going to take the lead on this? I just want to make sure I don't step on your toes.
Really, it's up to you, but I will say, because this is part of the toolkit, it has a lot of animation in terms of what drops in when, which you don't know what's going to show up behind you. So I can follow your speaking or I can take it. You tell me what you like.
I'm going to hand it off to you. That was my way of discreetly saying I forgot where the handoff was. So please tell me so I don't just keep talking. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Serona, and I will jump in if I have anything that I think could be helpful to add.
Okay, hold on 1 second. Let me just do this. Okay, so am I on the right screen? Yes. So the slide first talks about people that need to, we say connect to collect. And that's a nifty way to say become a member of the MLC. And so the kinds of people and companies that should be joining us, as Kris mentioned already, really music publishers and publishing administrators are probably going to make up the bulk of our members. Numerically, self-administered songwriters. So these are songwriters that are acting as their own publishers, and that's what we mean by self-administered. And then we have ex-US collective management organizations. These are organizations outside of the US that collect mechanical royalties for their own countries and other countries. And so songwriters and music publishers and administrators who are based outside of the US really have a choice. They can join us directly if they want to. And if they have, kept a hold of their rights to collect mechanicals in the US, they can become members of the MLC and we'll pay them directly. Or they can have their locally based mechanical rights organization collect the mechanicals from us on their behalf. So they have a choice. And we abbreviate collective management organizations as CMOs. Some of you I know are familiar with some of these. For example, in the UK, MCPS would be an example. So they will connect to collect and become members of the MLC. The next thing then that they have to do is play their part. When we say play your part, in other words, register your works with us. It's going to take everybody contributing to our database to make sure that it's accurate and up to date, and nobody knows the data about your musical works better than you do. And so we need parties to play their part. And, there's a variety of ways they can do that through our portal, through other kinds of data exchange mechanisms that we have if you're dealing with larger catalogs. But ultimately, we need our members to make sure that their data is correct and complete. And
Serona,
a lot of that will be done through our online portal. And so that's what we're in the middle of rolling out. We've got a lot of people starting to sign in now. We're very excited about it. And that was what you saw on Kris's timeline on the prior slide. So the next thing overall in the process is the digital services will report usage data and royalties to us. So streams and downloads, they have this obligation to report on a recurring basis to us exact usage data, how many streams, how many downloads, and to pay us statutory royalties. So that will be another key input coming into us. And then what our heavy lift is to match up all the data, right? So the digital services are reporting sound recording usage data to us, and we will be matching that to musical works data in our database, this matching process you might have heard of. And this is where, and when you take a look at the Educator Toolkit and you have this slide and you have some talking points, where our members give us information about the recordings of their musical works, especially if they're able to give us ISRCs, which are basically recording identifiers. That will be a big help to the matching process, but we're going to be able to accomplish this matching process in a lot of different ways. But where we do have identifiers to help make those connections, that sure will help matches get made more easily. So we're going to be doing the matching, and where we're able to match these up, we then pay out royalties. And so this is basically this set of people on the right side is exactly the same as the people on the left side. Will be paying our members. And I think a key thing to point out here is that unlike a performing rights organization that every songwriter needs to join, not every songwriter will become a member of the MLC. If they are a songwriter and all of their musical works are being handled by a music publisher or administrator, they as a songwriter will not become a member of the MLC. They will get their royalties that are paid out by the MLC through their publisher. It's self-administered songwriters acting as their own publisher that will be joining the MLC. That's different than PROs, where there is a revenue stream that goes to songwriters directly from a PRO, no matter what, whether they are or are not their own publisher. That's different with mechanicals, and it's different with the MLC. So there inevitably will be some cases where we're not able to match the sound recordings and the musical works data together. And in this way, we're going to have a very high level of transparency. The Music Modernization Act made transparency in the way the MLC will operate a huge priority. It's core to our mission. And so there is going to be the visibility of what is unmatched. Our overall database of musical works is going to be available to the public, but we will also be making information available so that our members and others can help us match sound recordings and musical works, so that, our aim is to pay out everything to the creators that we can. The MMA also set up some rules around what will happen with that unmatched activity after a period of time. It will be paid out to members. There will be specific allocation rules applied. And while that unmatched is sitting in our systems, it will be accruing interest. The copyright law requires that, and the royalties and the interest will be paid out. So the MLC is not going to be sitting on large batches of unclaimed monies for a period of time, indefinitely. The MMA lays out how all of that is supposed to work. So that's how it works in a nutshell, and we can certainly come back to this, as we get into questions.
Serona, if I could just jump in on one thing, the message of play your part, and I hope this doesn't come up in the slides later, because I think it's helpful to kind of explain now. Initially when we started to talk about playing your part, we would get from time to time a question, well, why should I do that? Why should I help you? And I think that question makes sense when you think about historically the fact that a lot of organizations that operated, especially in this mechanical space, they were private companies, and their databases were assets of theirs that they maintained as proprietary databases. And you didn't have access to their data, and they used their data as a part of their business. So it was a profit driver for them. The MLC is very different. We are a nonprofit, in fact, and again, by law, we are not allowed to deduct any administrative fees from the royalties that we collect. And that's a pretty unique feature among CMOs around the world. Most CMOs have to cover their operating costs by deducting an administration fee from the royalties they collect. So essentially that means for every dollar that comes in, maybe they pay out 90 cents or 85 cents, but they're not paying a dollar out. The MLC has to pay a dollar out. So we are not taking any piece of those royalties away. The digital services by law are required to pay our operating costs through a separate assessment, and they can't deduct that assessment from the royalties they pay us. So there's no end run there. They've got to pay all the royalties that they owe under the statute, and they've got to then pay our operating costs. And then lastly, the data, as Serona has mentioned, we have to provide public access to all of the musical works ownership information in our database. Obviously, the personal information, the financial information, that is not going to be publicly available for all the obvious and legal reasons. But the musical works ownership information, that has to be made available publicly. And in addition to having that available to be searched on a website, we'll have to make that available via a bulk feed mechanism that initially will involve allowing people to essentially get a download of all the data. But we can envision in the near future developing an API that folks can use to connect directly to the database and create that system-to-system connection. And the law limits us to charging a fee that only covers the cost of providing that bulk access. So again, even at the bulk level, our data cannot be a profit center for us the way that it is for any other private company. So when you kind of put all that together again, and you circle back to play your part, the reason that message I think is different for us and hopefully why it's more resonant is because we don't benefit from the data other than to do our job more effectively for our members. And if our data is more accurate, then our members will be paid more accurately. We're going to do everything like we're going to do that, but with hundreds of millions of lines of data, it's obviously a much more effective exercise if each person who has data reflected in our database is looking at their data. Most songwriters, write in the neighborhood of 100, 200 songs over the course of a career that are commercially released. The exception are writers that write in the TV or sync space, composers who write for film. Some of those writers we know can have 1,500 works. Some writer producers maybe have a couple thousand works, but those numbers are still tiny by comparison to the number of works that'll be in our database. So this becomes a much more effective exercise, I think, when we can break it down and think about it in terms of a songwriter and their songs, or again, a publisher and their catalog, than all the data that exists on every service in the US market. And in that way, by doing this together with our members, we'll be much more effective at it, and they will receive all the benefits of that, because 100% of those royalties will then go to them. Back to you, Serona.
Okay, so next slide. So now we're getting actually into educational partnerships, which I know is particularly interesting to those of you attending this. So I actually am going to ask Kris to talk a little bit about why I am even in this role. What exactly does this mean, and why he asked me to be a part of this, and then I'll share some more details with you guys.
So at a really high level, what we recognized was that you represent on your own experts and professionals in our industry. And having a relationship with you, an ongoing relationship, not a one-time relationship, would help us to keep up with all the latest developments in the industry and get the benefit of your expertise, while at the same time providing this great conduit from us to all of the students that you teach. And as the second bullet under the why indicates, your students are the future professionals in our industry. And we know that. So by connecting with all of you and having that direct and ongoing connection, we're hoping to sort of build the pipeline early and make sure that everyone who comes into this industry understands what the MLC does. And certainly anyone who is a creator and ultimately maybe in a position to receive money that the MLC collects, either directly or indirectly, understands exactly how that works and can get connected with us right out of the gate. As this third point indicates, and I love thinking about it this way, your campuses, your programs are like mini music business ecosystems. Every player in the industry, including the consumer, is represented on each of your campuses and often in each of your classes. Because of course, what we also know is when kids sit in your classes, they don't know yet if they're going to become a professional songwriter or performer or producer or engineer or A&R person or marketing person or publishing administrator or business affairs person. What they know is they love music and they want to learn more and they want to be a part of it. So sitting in your classes, we've got people who potentially have interest in everything, every aspect of the industry. And if we make it even more specific, what that means is we've got potential members of the MLC, because there are songwriters who are self-administered in your classes right now. And we have students who aspire to be administrators or publishers who want to learn that part of the business. So if we can work with you to share the information about what the MLC does with your students, we're effectively arming folks who may work for the MLC or work for a publisher someday, and the folks that they will work with and help, the writers, the creators. And we think that's a really compelling opportunity to reach folks and help, again, make sure that they understand how this will all work. I would love nothing more than 10 years from now to be able to feature a really successful self-administered or a songwriter of any kind who says, I joined the MLC back when I was a student at the University of, and my professor was so-and-so, one of you, and I learned all about the MLC, and because of that, I joined the MLC as a student, and I was collecting my mechanicals from that day on, years before they became the superstar writer that they might become. That would be a fantastic story. So that's the why, and of course, then when thinking about who could help us do that, Serona was just an obvious choice for me, because as long as I've known her, she's been both an extraordinary professional and an educator. So she's our connection to your world. She's one of you, and that's going to help ensure that we're thinking about that outreach from your perspective, and we can do things that are helpful to you. It's a unique role to play being an educator, and I don't want to pretend that I know how that works, but I know Serona does, because she does that for a living too. So she's going to help us make sure that we're delivering information that's helpful for you, and that makes it as easy as possible for you to pull that information into your classes. So as you can see at the top, we want to provide you with materials that you can use in your courses. We want to work with you to find creative ways that you and your students can help educate others in your programs, and even the local songwriter and music publisher community in your cities and towns. We think there are just lots of opportunities here to work together and to make you a real and meaningful part of the MLC team and the MLC story. And that's what educational partnerships is all about.
And I'm so excited to be a part of this. You know, as I've been meeting people, they'll ask me, what is educational partnership? partnerships, because you don't see that title at a lot of other places. You know, it's really something we've created, and there are certainly people that focus on outreach, and we have a number of folks focusing on outreach broadly, but educational partnerships is really something that, at least thus far, appears to be quite a unique set of relationships that we're going to be building, and I'm thrilled to be doing that. So let me share a little bit more detail with you actually about this. So we are starting next week, rolling out our Educator Toolkits. In fact, by the time we're done with this session, I think our section on the website may be up and running, where you can actually request access to it. So what's going to be in it is an overview of the MLC, which is a video that you can share. It will be an unlisted video on YouTube, and you can have a link that you could share in your learning management system, Blackboard, Canvas. It's about a 16-minute video. We have some called white label PowerPoint slides. So they are text for PowerPoint slides, some of which you've seen already today, but they're just the text without the MLC logo and everything else on it. And you can drop it into whatever format of PowerPoint slides you like. I know a lot of you, use the university branded ones or your own for your classes. So you can drop the content in, and it includes a talking point and scripts. So you can make it look like you created it. It's totally, that was kind of the point behind it. There's a PDF that comes with the kit, and what it includes in there is a handful of in-class activities that you can have students do. There's a trivia game, some scavenger hunts of looking up some information. You could have them do them individually in teams. Actually kind of works better with Zoom and technical things, because you can use the chat as effectively a buzzer. Like whoever gets the right answer in the chat first wins the prize, whatever that may be. Some class discussion topics. And there's also some test questions you could take from to put on, in an exam where you might have offered this as a module, and the trivia questions that you might use in a trivia game. So all of this will be available to you starting next week for however you want to use it. It's meant for use in your classes. So you can share, different things on your LMS. It's not meant for just broad internet posting. These were really created in the context of what you guys do. Our website, though, has tons of information out there already that you can already start using. Kris talked about the form that's there already to have self-administered songwriters start thinking about the information they need to gather. So there's already webinars out there, recorded webinars, FAQs, lots of stuff up there, and that will continue to grow. But this kit is actually made specifically for educators, and once you request it through the website, you'll get access to it. It's not just posted on the website broadly. It's for your community specifically. Okay, so I think we might be at the point, there's also a resources list of websites, videos, documents, books, and over time, I would love to hear back from you about articles you've found and resources you know of that I can add to that list and share with all of you about, things that you might give your students assigned reading or watching as part of a module that might involve this. Okay, so one other quick mention, something that's in the works. We're not quite ready to premiere it, but I'll let you know it's coming. So we are exploring ways to really sort of give faculty and students like an ambassador type of designation. And there'd be different ones for faculty, different ones for students. You would engage with us. We'd make sure that you understand what we do and that you feel comfortable explaining it to other folks. And then essentially, you'd be able to call yourself something like an MLC education ambassador, something to that effect. We're still working out the final points of it. And you would renew it every year. So you can, say that you have that designation for a particular year. And you would have an opportunity to have your program listed on our website as one that has participation in this program. So that's still coming. Once you connect with us for the Educator Toolkit, we'll also then stay in touch with you and let you know when we're ready to premiere this program and how to get involved in it. It's going to be very easy for you to do. There's not a lot that you'll have to do on your part, really beyond what you're likely to do already, which is to help educate people in your classes and or on your campus about what the MLC is and how they need to, connect with us. So we're really excited about that, and that will be coming for the spring. So let me take it off of share. And now I think we still have, at least some time, maybe 13 minutes or so left for some questions, Armen. So let's see, do you want us to just have a look in the chat? You want to tackle those things? Right now, there's just a couple of really supportive comments. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Angeline, if I'm saying that right, for your comments in the chat. We are really excited. We've been looking forward to this MEIEA Meets now for several weeks. So I'm so happy it's finally happening.
While we're giving folks time to think about a question, I'll quickly add too, if any of you take advantage of the materials and you use them in your class and you want to let us know, send us a photo, we'd love to highlight what you're doing on our social media feed so that your folks on campus can see that you're connected to us and you're dealing with current cutting edge things. So again, we really want to recognize the great work you're doing and help make sure that people see that. Because I know, many of you're doing all this great work and you're educating all these people, and people don't always appreciate the impact that you have on the business. We'd love to let people know that and highlight the great things that you're doing whenever they relate to the MLC. So again, please consider that. It's at your option. It's no obligation in any way, but we think that's another great way that we can help you and spread the word about all the great work you're doing.
All right. So you guys are, let's see, can someone post a website link? Yeah, so actually let me switch my windows over and let me see if actually, in fact, this new page is up now on the site. Earlier this morning, they were getting it ready. I gave it a final review of approval. So let's see, I don't see it there yet. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put in the chat the link where it will appear. So let me just put that here in the chat. So under this sort of higher level link, there will all of a sudden be another option that says for educators. Okay, so that will be there. And what I'll do here is I'll also put in the chat my email address. And if you want to email me, I will send you a link to it as soon as it's live, which will probably be before the end of the workday today. So happy to share that with you in either way. You can check out the site or, ooh, I look like I'm frozen. Oh no, did you lose me?
I still hear you.
Oh, okay. You can check out the site or send me an email or I'm back and I'll get back in touch with you.
I see a couple things just popped up, Serona. We can look at these together, but Alf, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, up in Syracuse, just up the road from where I spent 4 years in college. And hopefully it's not snowing and cold in Syracuse already, but I think that idea of doing a local community engagement event is exactly the kind of thing that we envision for that ambassador program. So thrilled that sounds like something that could be of interest to you, and definitely drop a line of Serona, and those are the types of things we'd love to see you do. I do want to emphasize too, again, when we think about how do we reach self-administered songwriters in particular, right? Not the superstar writers, but the writers that are up and coming or the writers that are doing themselves. They're in every one of your cities around the country. And that's where, again, you and your students can be incredibly helpful to us in both educating those folks and connecting with them. And I think that's a really great message to be a part of. Hey, local musicians in my town, here's some information that could help you get paid. So again, I think, together we can help make sure that we're bringing the message of the MLC and really the music business to all the people that are in the business, regardless of where they are. It's no longer about being in LA, Miami, New York, or Nashville. You can be a working professional musician in any city in the world. And, this is another way that we can try to reach people where they are. So it'd be great to do that. And I also am jealous that you have an Apple store in Syracuse. I imagine in Binghamton, they may still be waiting for that, but.
See, I'm jealous of the cold weather. I'm in a strange position. What can I say?
And then Nate, you asked, is the hope that the database will be a one-stop source of truth? Yes, that's exactly right. And the trick, of course, is we can't require other people to use it, but if we can make the database easy to access for anyone who could benefit from accessing it, whether it be for personal purposes or again to deliver services that also benefit creators, then hopefully they'll take advantage of it. And we also look at Day's role in that area as being critical, because he helped to found a rights administration company, Tune Registry. He's worked in that entrepreneurial space for many years, and he's out there talking with companies in that space, trying to understand how we can better interact with them. On this DQI initiative, I think we've just announced, Ellen, did he announce yesterday in his webinar a few new DQI partners?
Yes, he did. He did. And I know we didn't cover, you mentioned it quickly, and I meant to tell you I didn't put that slide in so that we had time for the educational slides, but the DQI is our data quality initiative, just to, so many acronyms we throw at you.
Yes.
And yes, and there's a few more companies now that are partnering with us on helping people confirm their data is accurate.
Right. Basically, we just need the file of data to be formatted in a certain way, and it's an Excel file, so it's not heavy technology, but we recognize that if you're using a system or a platform already to capture your data, the easiest thing for you would be to go into that platform, press a button, and then the system or platform automatically generates the file that we need in our format to do that comparison. So he's now got we've got 4 companies that he has connected with, or we have connected with, that are going to enable that functionality for their customers, their clients. And there's no limit on the number of companies that can do that. So, the more the better. And that's another way that we can, again, connect with more people. And Eric, you had a shout out for Day too. And we agree, he's a pretty fantastic colleague and guy. And I hear he's rather tall. I've never seen him in person other than watching him speak at conferences, but I'm looking forward to seeing him one day in person too. Let's see, David, going forward, what will the relationship be between the MLC and Harry Fox? That's a great question. We get all sorts of variations on that question. So the very simple and first answer is Harry Fox is a vendor. We have engaged them to help us stand up the MLC and our operations more quickly than we could have had we done it on our own. And we didn't have a lot of time because the law put very strict requirements on when we had to be fully operational. So Congress sort of laid the groundwork out, and we then had to figure out how to do it. And HFA was selected by the board following a pretty extensive process that began with requests for information and then proposals. I think it was a dozen companies, or around a dozen companies, began in that process by expressing some interest. And then as those conversations continued, quite frankly, a number of them backed away because they probably realized that they were not able to do that. There were a small number of companies at the end that were there and that could have been great partners. We know all of them, and the board made the choice to go with Harry Fox. So they are a vendor, and they're helping us both by essentially giving us their data, which now becomes our data, so that we have a head start on the data front. They're helping us to manage the database. They're helping us to manage the royalties process, a lot of the administrative work behind the scenes. But they're a vendor, and they remain a standalone entity. They do other things, and that relationship is not automatically perpetual in any way. So we're going to start with them. They've been a great partner to us, and then we'll see how things go over time. Hopefully, David, that answers your question or gives you some more detail about the relationship.
And I would just add to that some people who already have a relationship with HFA, many publishers are affiliated with them. That's not going to change. So sometimes people think we are somehow replacing them or something. That's not what's happening.
Yeah, and on that note, if as a publisher you were affiliated with HFA and you were already providing them with musical works information, for as long as they're a vendor of ours, they also have to keep providing that new data they receive for musical works ownership with us. So if you're sending your data to HFA, you don't also have to send it to us, but you can always send it to us. And that's, again, the key. It's a choice. The MLC doesn't eliminate all the different people you have to share data with, but hopefully it provides that central source of truth for your data that over time others will rely on, as one of you touched on before. But again, the sort of pipeline, if you will, that HFA has with their members is one that they still have to keep sharing with us while they're a vendor. So you don't have to send your data to us if you are also sending it first to HFA. I know we're getting close to the end of the hour. Armen, any other questions that you might have that you've heard from colleagues or others?
This has been incredibly helpful. And I think one of the positive takeaways, especially, is that, Kris, you mentioned that this is a partnership. This is not a one-time thing. And so I appreciate both Kris and Serona's time and for presenting this for us. And I look forward to maybe in a few months checking in with you again. I know we'll definitely call on Serona many times. Just checking in again and just seeing how things are running, you know, come January and things are kicking in for all of you. I know there's been several months of very busy time for you, and I can only imagine how it's going to look a couple of months from now. But I appreciate your time, and I appreciate you guys being a partner of MEIEA as well. We will definitely post this on our YouTube channel for those of you who are joining us. MEIEA.org is our website, so you can go there and click through to our social media and our YouTube channel and find all of these resources. I'm very excited about the ambassador program as well. I think that's a great, that's going to be a great partnership for educators. So with that, I want to thank all of you for joining us, and thanks again, Kris and Serona from the MLC. And hopefully we'll see you guys soon. Good luck.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for having us. Bye, everyone.